It's week 18 in the National Football League, and while most of the berths are already secured, there'll be a lot of jockeying for seeds and matchups this weekend. We'll talk Eagles and seeding with Sal Paolantonio, tanking and Birds Giants with Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News. We'll talk Super Bowl odds with Sean Green, and fantasy best and worst with Buffalo Bill Reinhard. That is all right now on a week 18 edition of This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Hello, everybody. Pat Callahan joining you for a Week 18 edition of This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me for the next 80 minutes or so as we talk about Week 18, the last week of the regular season, the additional week added so that 32 guys could get even richer than they are now. All right, but appreciate everybody for sitting in tonight. Give me a follow on X at TWIPFPat if you would. You can also follow the network at JAKIB Sports. All right. Don't forget to stream here. Join the stream. A lot of great guys and women on this stream. You can do that on YouTube also. And believe me, I'll be looking at the comments throughout. Happy New Year to everybody. And thank you very much for those New Year's wishes here. All right. So let's get it going. Let's get it going. Of course, the great Sal Paolantonio will be joining me in just a couple of minutes. At the end of the show, Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News. We'll talk Eagles Giants, but really I want to talk to him about tanking. A lot of commentary in the New York press about the fact that Giants blew the Colts out last week, as if that was a mistake, as if the Giant players weren't supposed to do that. I want to talk to Pat about that. And, of course, Sean Green. I want to see what those Super Bowl odds right now are, particularly in the NFC. And then Bill Reinhard will join us at the bottom of this hour just to sum up the fantasy season. Thank God it's over. And we'll do a little best and worst. All right. But Xander, why don't we bring this gentleman on? We can't keep this guy waiting. And that is the host of the NFL Matchup Show and and the national correspondent for ESPN. And of course, the author of How Football Explains America and Philly Special, Sal Paolantonio. Sal, how you doing?
Pat, happy 2025. This week in pro football just rolls on, Pat. I love it.
Does, Sal. I'm telling you, it rolls on.
You cannot stop this week in pro football, Pat Callahan.
No, Sal. That is a fact. That's a fact, Jack. I'm always willing to talk about the National Football League. So let's you and I do it. Thank you very much for joining me. Let's talk Eagles first, Sal, if we might. Just a word, if you would, Saquon. You and I talked earlier in the week about the decision to rest Barkley. You suspected this is what the Eagles were going to do. And you and I, in speaking earlier, we posited that once the Eagles pulled Barkley with 11 minutes to go in a game in which they were carving Dallas up, that was more or less sort of tipped the hand that they weren't going to play him this Sunday, right?
Yeah, they were celebrating with 11 minutes to go that he had 2,000 yards rushing.
Right.
One of only 9 players in NFL history to do that, Pat. So once that happened, it was pretty clear that the plan was not to play him against the Giants in Week 18.
Right.
But I believe that they were wavering a little bit at the beginning of the week. And that's why Nick Sirianni said on the radio that he was going to consult management and players and coaches. Right. I think there was a sentiment in the building that they should go for it. But in the end, the bottom line was this team has not had a bye for 12 weeks.
Right.
So it wasn't about only Saquon Barkley. It was about Lane Johnson. It was about Jordan Mailata. It was about the offensive line and getting them a bye because they're not going to have a bye.
Right.
So it gives them a week off. I think that was a key decision, the key part of this decision. The other factor was last year you went into Tampa in a wildcard game without A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
He got hurt the week before.
Yeah.
And that was a major factor in the loss. Now, you could say, well, they would have lost anyway. But if they had A.J. Brown on the field, it definitely would have had a different dynamic offensively.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly true. And just to hammer home that thought, I think it's clear that had, in fact, Barkley run for another 50 yards in the last 11 minutes of that game, and he had only 45, 50 yards to go, Sal. I think they might jam him in there in that first quarter. But
you can make an argument that he has already had a better season than Eric Dickerson in 1984. So in 16 games with 345 rushing attempts, 5.8 yards per attempt, and Eric Dickerson had 379 in 16 games. He had 34 more carries.
Yeah.
So Barkley had 34 more carries at 6 yards a pop in 16 games. He breaks the record.
That's fair.
Remember, Dickerson had 34 more carries in 16 games than Barkley did.
Yeah. Of course, Dickerson had Jeff Kemp at quarterback. I'm sure you remember that. But that was that's amazing. It's amazing Sally gained anything. But that's a whole other story now. We'll get to the Rams in a little bit because I do want to ask you something about them.
But I don't remember Jeff Kemp. I'll tell you the truth.
All right, Sal, let's get to the other injury that I think the Saquon debate kind of pushed to the back page, which I don't think bothered the Eagles at all, and that is Jalen Hurts, okay? He gets hurt in week 16 against the Washington Commanders and enters the concussion protocol. He is still not out. Give me your thoughts on the fact that Hurts is still there now, coming up on 2 weeks, Sal.
Yeah, moments ago, we just got the injury practice report from the Eagles, and Jalen Hurts is not a participant at all. So rather than recite the long concussion protocol for the NFL, I would invite anybody to go online and just Google NFL's concussion protocol. It's very involved. It's a 5-step complicated process. It's very specific. It was designed by the league and the NFLPA and physicians and consultants in concussions all over the country. And they came upon this particular protocol, and it so far has been working very, very well. And it's very difficult to get through it if you have these concussion symptoms. You can't game the system. You can't fool it. It's designed to make sure that the players are protecting themselves from themselves, and that in the end, the team does not have control over him getting back on the field. It's very, right. I would invite people to, and if you look at it, it's pretty clear, just surmising, that he is still in the early stages of this protocol, because the latter stages call for him to be on the field.
Sal, as a matter of fact, you mentioned that 5 stages. You were kind enough to send them to me. For instance, number 4 is non-contact training drills. The player participates in non-contact football activities. Now, the fact that he was not a participant at all in practice, that means then he hasn't even reached stage 4. Is that right?
It could mean that. I mean, we just don't know. We don't want to guess, but it certainly seems that way. That once you reach stage 4 of the protocol, you can get on the field. And since he's not gotten on the field, we can deduce that he is still in stages 1, 2, or 3.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that is something to keep an eye on. You mentioned the practice report. The Eagles had 5 guys not practicing today, and 18 were limited.
Right. Well, that's normal going into a week like this. The key is that Jalen Hurts didn't practice last week. He didn't practice this week. It looks like he's not going to practice this week because Friday's practice is very light. That's 2 weeks of practice.
Right.
So he needs to get ready for that wild card game.
Right.
A week from this weekend, he's going to have to get onto the practice field, and presumably on Wednesday. Wednesday's the install day. It's a walkthrough day. They don't do any heavy running. There's no contact. They walk through what they installed in the game plan offensively and defensively so they can visualize it on the field.
Agreed.
Right? So if he's not on the field next Wednesday, then there's major question marks.
Right.
Major question marks.
Exactly. And even if he is, Sal, and I'm getting ahead of I know I'm getting over my skis here in terms of the timing, but as you pointed out in recent shows, what works in the read option the Eagles have is Jalen Hurts as a threat to run the ball. If he's late getting cleared and to play in that wild card game, might that not affect how often the Eagles trust him to run the ball?
Well, Pat, you would think so, and it's not highly speculative for you to ask that question. But I think what the Eagles proved against Dallas is that they could adjust the run game and they could adjust it on the fly. So Mike Zimmer was bringing A-gap blitzes. He was blitzing on runs downs. He was bringing the heat constantly. The Eagles went into the game with some adjustments, and then they made further adjustments. They brought on C.J. Uzomah onto the field, backup tight end. They put him as an H-back. They had Grant Calcaterra already on the field, so they're in two tight end. There were some occasions where they had two tight end plus an extra offensive lineman. They went heavy against Zimmer's double A-gap blitzes, and that's how they were effective. Then they started to run on the edge, and then there's the wear down effect. This offensive line's size, speed, and power, and communication, and interlocking ability to open up holes is, in my view, second to none. I think it's better than Baltimore's, and they have a great running game. And I don't think there's anybody else that even comes close. So by the fourth quarter, after getting pounded by Lane Johnson going to the Pro Bowl, Cam Jurgens going to the Pro Bowl, Landon Dickerson going to the Pro Bowl. I mean, the whole right side of the offensive line is going to the Pro Bowl. These guys wear them down, and by the time the fourth quarter comes around, now Barkley's got that extra burst.
Yep, that's right. You see it week in and week out. And Sal, one other thing I want to ask you, Eagles, before the break here is the Eagles now, as locked in as the 2 seed, will get, assuming that they win the wild card game, 2 home games in South Philadelphia. Is there any venue in the NFL that competes with Lincoln Financial as an asset for the home playoff team like Lincoln Financial?
Definitely not. Not in January. Not when the sun goes down. No way.
Right.
It's rough. It's the concrete jungle. I misspoke, by the way. It's not the whole right side of the offensive line. Dickerson's at left guard. It's Dickerson, Jurgens, and Cam and Lane Johnson. And I'll bet you Mailata is a alternate. He should be to the Pro Bowl. He grades out as one of the best left tackles in the NFL as a pass blocker and as a run blocker. And Becton, I mean, for a guy who did not play guard 8 months ago, ever, the way he has come in and been taught the system and the Jeff Stoutland way of Stoutland University is one of the great untold stories of this season.
Yeah. Stoutland has really, really established himself as
whatever they're paying him, they should triple it tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, listen, Sal, we get back. I want your expertise relative to these playoff seedings. I think it's very interesting. I want to question you about whether some teams, I'm surprised some teams are resting guys when I think they shouldn't be. I want to talk to you about that and also get your opinion on that Detroit-Minnesota game. We'll do all that with the great Sal Paolantonio. We get back here on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Auto.
Welcome back. We've got another exciting play underway at KennedyAuto.com.
That's right. At KennedyAuto.com, you can browse their entire inventory from home.
The customer is scrolling hundreds of Ford, Mazda, and Subaru vehicles right at his fingertips.
He made his selection and got a bottom line price set directly to his email. He could go all the way.
And the deal is good, all without leaving his couch. Incredible. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
Discover the essence of true community banking with First Bank, your trusted partner across Eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Their network of branches brings you convenient access to dedicated personal bankers who understand your unique needs. At First Bank, you're not just a customer, you're a valued member of the community. Additionally, they are excited to announce the opening of 2 new branches in Media, Pennsylvania and Trenton, New Jersey, bringing their personalized banking services even closer to you. Connect with any member of the team today at their Westchester office, conveniently located at 849 Paoli Pike, or call them at 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
Johnny Apple's restaurant and bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Hi, welcome back here this week in pro football on JAKIB Sports. Pat Callahan joining you along with the excellent Sal Paolantonio, the host of the NFL Matchup Show on ESPN and ESPN's national NFL correspondent. All right, Sal, with your permission, I will ask Xander to bring up this playoff seeding because I'm fascinated by a couple things, and I want to get your take on it because this is the week where coaches now, like we just talked about with Nick Sirianni, have to decide if they're sitting guys or not. Now, Saquon aside, Sirianni's decision was easy. They're locked into the 2 seed. They don't gain anything, so just do it. Unlike Dan Campbell, who just the hell with it. He just plays everybody all the time anyway. But if you look there, Sal, you see Eagles, Packers now, and then you got Rams and Commanders. Now, if Washington wins Sunday against Dallas, they are the 6th seed. They will beat Green Bay out. You see any trouble with Washington handling Dallas on Sunday?
I do not, Pat. I do not. And you know what? To me, Washington's a tougher matchup for the Eagles than Green Bay.
I think so too, Sal. I do. I think so too. I think the Packers, again, I think their passing game is seriously compromised. And I think Philadelphia would handle Jordan Love much easier than they would have to handle.
They have problems with Jaden Daniels, and specifically their linebackers couldn't handle his speed or elusiveness. They did a poor job of spying him. Of course, they were without C.J. Gardner-Johnson late in that game in Landover 2 weekends ago. But I think they would have problems with Jaden Daniels as a runner no matter what. In the fourth quarter, when defenses are worn down, that's when he seems to be running the most. You know, he has more rushes now than Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you wouldn't think of that. But there you go. All right, Sal, the one that interests me right now, of course, is my beloved Rams, who shockingly managed to beat Arizona despite the fact they had no offense at all Saturday night. Now, the Rams, in my opinion, sit now as the 3 seed, and they should do everything in their power to stay there. Because if whoever the 4 seed is going to play the loser of Minnesota-Detroit. So do you agree that the Rams should, in fact, beat Seattle Sunday so they avoid that and play either Green Bay or Washington?
Well, listen, I think the Rams are in a good spot at the 3 seed for sure. But they're going to have problems with Washington going out there. They're going to have problems with Minnesota. They'll have problems with Detroit. So, you know, their secondary right now is not really doesn't really match up well. They don't score enough points. They're going to have problems with any team that comes out there. You know, Stafford's going to have to carry the team. Stafford in that passing game, they're going to have to find a way to score points and carry that team. I think the number one team to worry about as a shocker is Tampa at home.
Yeah.
Tampa at home. Listen, you know, Baker Mayfield has thrown the most touchdown passes in the NFC. Number one, ahead of Goff, ahead of Darnold, ahead of Goff, ahead of Stafford, ahead of everybody. He's number one. Liam Cohen in that offense. And they have balance. They have third most rushing attempts in the National Football League. So they have balance on offense, something that Todd Bowles has salivated over for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that has helped their defense. It will be tough, no matter who goes in there, to beat Tampa in Tampa. I don't care who it is.
Sal Pal, let's stay in the NFC for just a minute. Talk about then Detroit and Minnesota. So Minnesota, with a gaudy 14-2 record, is facing the prospect of having to win in Detroit, or else they spend the entire playoffs on the road. Now, this is Sam Darnold. Now you're asking Sam Darnold. Now, he came through last week. I don't deny that against Green Bay. But as I said, I think Green Bay's suspect anyway. Now he has to go on the road in Detroit against a team that's almost invulnerable in that building. Tell me your thoughts on Vikings at Lions Sunday night.
Well, I think the Lions just scored too many points at home. They will blitz Sam Darnold from the get-go. Aaron Glenn will really dial up as many blitzes as he possibly can to get Sam Darnold off of his mark, take away the timing and rhythm of that Vikings offense, make, and they'll play man-to-man on the outside to make sure that Sam Darnold holds the ball a click or two more than he's used to. So they're going to come after Sam Darnold. And, the last time Detroit played the Vikings, it was week 7. It was a close game. But Jared Goff only had 3 incompletions in that game. He was 22 of 25. Right. 3 incompletions against Brian Flores in that defense of Brian Flores of the Vikings. That was in Minnesota.
Yeah, I was going to say that was on the road. Yeah,
I was in Minnesota. Yeah. It'll be a really tough environment. Sam Darnold against that crowd, against that defense of Aaron Glenn and the Detroit Lions. They will come after him. I like the Lions a lot in that game. The Lions are 5-0 in the division, but they've never won back-to-back division titles since 1952. That was the last time they won back-to-back. Not even you and I remember 1952.
Sad. That was only 72 years ago now. You're trying to say it's some sort of a trend. But 72 years since Detroit won back-to-back division titles. That's unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But all right, Sal, let's look at the American Football Conference here. And I'm going to give you your props now. About 5 weeks ago, you were talking up the Los Angeles Chargers. And that was even before their quarterback has hit his stride, which I think he has done now. Yeah. That kid throws a ball, the most frozen rope, I think, in the NFL, Justin Herbert. Give me your thoughts. The Chargers, if they win, Sal, and Pittsburgh loses to Pittsburgh plays Cincinnati, I think. Do I have that right? Yeah, Cincinnati, yep. Pittsburgh, yeah. If Cincinnati was to win that game, then the Chargers could actually get up into the 5 seed. Give me your thoughts on the Chargers. Are they a live dog here in the AFC playoffs?
Oh, they are. They'll go on the road and they'll win their first playoff game. I think they have balance on offense. They have potential explosiveness to play. He brought over his defensive coordinator from Michigan, Jesse Minter. And, for the longest time, they were leading the league in points allowed. So they have a good, solid defense that's in the right position. They play good alignment, assignment football, just like Michigan. Michigan.
Right.
They're well coached. They don't make mistakes. They have good alignment, assignment football. They've had a couple of bad games, but not that much. And now Herbert has fit his. They will go on the road and win their first playoff game. The team that's the most intriguing to me in the AFC is the Broncos. The problem is the Broncos probably will have to go to Buffalo week 1 in the wild card, and that's just a dead end.
Right.
It is a dead end. It is.
Yeah. Denver, that's a shame. Sal, I'm just telling you, they blew it last week. They should have gone for 2. I know hindsight, there's no clarity like that kind of hindsight, but I think Sean Payton, you can't have Joe Burrow standing on the other sideline and not go for 2 there. And that's exactly what Sean Payton did. And that was a terrible mistake. But anyway, he's done a hell of a job.
He's done a great job. It's just it's terrible that they got to go to Buffalo because they're going to get waxed. They're going to get waxed by Buffalo.
That's a tough spot. That is a tough spot. You're certainly right. All right, Xander, thanks a lot for that playoff picture. Thanks, Sal. Just a couple more before I let you go here. I just want to get your opinion. I'm going to talk. Pat Leonard, the New York Daily News, is going to join me.
The great Pat Leonard of Notre Dame University.
That's right. But I just want to run this by you. Thank God this conversation, this talk never happens here in Philadelphia, but a lot of talk about tanking in these towns like Las Vegas, in Chicago, or New England, and New York. And I'm dead set against it. I can't stand even to talk about it. With all the locker rooms and sidelines you've been in, is there any credible thought in an organization to not trying to win games in order to improve draft seeding?
Pat, it's not really something that I do a heck of a lot of thinking about, honestly, to tell you the truth.
Right. Yeah, I guess I don't either. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's just a conversation that certain media members love to have and get fan reaction on, but I don't think anybody does it within any building in the NFL. I really don't. You can tell by the way the Giants went out and did their business last week, and they were ecstatic about it. And I think that's the way the game's meant to be played. Sal, one last thing I want to ask you about is the window now is open, unlike in previous years, for assistants on playoff teams to interview for jobs. Now, the two Eagles coordinators have only been here for a year, but do you see any interest among the usual suspects on Black Monday who may be taking a look at some of the Eagles assistant coaches?
Well, Pat, Vic Fangio, he's an older coach. He's 66 years old. So I'm not sure whether or not, he'll have an opportunity to be a head coach again in the NFL. And certainly he's focused on winning a Super Bowl here in Philadelphia for sure, 100%, unlike some others that we won't mention by name. But I think, as for Kellen Moore, I think he certainly wants a shot. No question about that. And he certainly deserves to be in those conversations.
Right.
You got Liam Cohen in Tampa. You got Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson in Detroit.
Right.
So those are three names right there that I think are going to be getting a lot of interest from a lot of teams. And Kellen Moore certainly be on that short list 100%.
All right. And that's something next week I'll talk to you about when I use the term usual suspects because it seems to me, Sal, that it's the teams who keep turning over their front office and their coaches every year or every 2 or 3 years. They never get any type of, they never put down any roots on building a winning team. But we'll talk about that. So I know you'll be, this week, the matchup show. Are there any particular games you're focusing on?
Oh, yeah. We're focused on the 2 Saturday games in the AFC North for sure. And then we have a whole segment on Detroit and Minnesota. What a blockbuster final game of the year that is.
That is. That really worked out nice. Hadn't worked out nice for NBC. Certainly did. So that'll be fun to watch. And it's always fun to watch the matchup show. I urge everybody to do it. Sal Paolantonio, thanks very much for joining me this week. All right.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
All right. Sal Paolantonio joining me as he does every week here to talk about that. The Philadelphia Eagles and those playoff seedings. I think it's interesting. I think the Chargers could be a problem. Remember, it was only a couple of years ago. Chargers went into Baltimore and beat what I refer to as January Lamar. I don't think there'll be any player in the NFL in the playoffs under more pressure to go deep this year than Lamar Jackson. He shows it every year. He's an MVP. Probably going to win the MVP this year. But let's see it in January. We'll see about that. All right, listen, we get back. Buffalo Bill Reinhardt's going to join me. We're going to put a bow on this fantasy season, and thank God for that. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Fantasy Guru.
What on earth are you doing? We have dinner reservations in 15 minutes.
I'm trying to figure out who to start in my fantasy football lineup. Every website I check has a different opinion. It's driving me crazy. How do you set your lineup so fast?
I have a secret weapon that will blow your mind.
Wow. What's the secret?
I've been using fantasyguru.com for all of my fantasy football decisions.
Fantasyguru.com? Isn't that with that crazy guy, Jeff Mans?
You mean the legendary fantasy guru, Jeff Mans? He's a genius. Fantasyguru.com has everything you need to dominate your league. Starts, sits, busts. It's like having a fantasy football expert panel in your corner.
Wow. Fantasyguru.com. But I feel like you're cheating on me.
How do you think I won our league last year?
Fantasyguru.com. It'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Join fantasyguru.com today. Use the code NEW30 for 30% off instant savings.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spent. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@WhisPearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@WhisPearl.com.
Welcome back here. Thank you for joining me this week in pro football here on JAKIB Sports, Week 18 in the National Football League. And let's bring this gentleman on here so I can do spew my final bit of invective on the fantasy football season, and that's with the great Bill Reinhard from the New York Daily News and Fantasy Guru. Hello, Bill.
Hey, Pat. Bring it, man. Bring it. Let's go.
Bill, our season just ended last week. And I won the head-to-head thing, but I don't care about that. But I could not. My brother Tom, he won, and Congrats. He had his first 4 picks. I mean, he had. Let me see if I got this right. It was like Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Joe Burrow, and I mean, he just nailed every single pick.
Nice.
Yeah, and boy, he was. At the end of that game Saturday, I just gave up. What can you do?
My son won our league, and he had Jaden Daniels, he had Kyron Williams, he had Jahmyr Gibbs, Devonta Smith. I mean, he had McBride. Everybody had their best game of the season. It's his second year in the league, and the kid won. So congratulations.
I sat Smith this week. I'm thinking, who's going to throw him the ball? Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee. And they 2 touchdowns, 120 yards.
Yep, that's exactly his dilemma too. He started him over Tank Bigsby, and he made the right decision.
Oh man! So I was thinking, Bill, let's you and I make a couple lists up here. The biggest 2024 fantasy surprises, and by surprise I mean positive, guys who actually way outperformed their ADP. All right, so why don't I'll throw a name out. And then you tell me what you think, and then you throw a name out. I think you'd have to say that Baker Mayfield, 42 touchdowns. This guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe that, huh?
He had a great year, and it's funny because in my preseason prognostications, I said that Baker would be a top 7 quarterback. He was a top 10 last year. His targets are phenomenal, and he just got better. And I think he finished top 4 or 5 in fantasy points for quarterbacks. He had a great year. The talent's there. He had to find a team that would work with his talents and stick with him.
It's funny, Bill. I saw a picture somebody posted on X this week of I don't know if this was last season. I think it was of a pregame Carolina Panthers, 2 quarterbacks jogging around, Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold.
They're classmates. They're draft classmates.
Oh, man.
1 and 2, right, Pat? They were 1 and 2.
Yeah. 2 Carolina Panthers, though. Does that not sum up that organization?
Blows your mind.
Yeah, It does. And speaking of Sam Darnold, 36 touchdowns, Bill.
Yeah. Shocking.
Yeah. Just because not nearly enough of them to Justin Jefferson. I can vouch for that.
Only if you had him on your team like you did. But he finished QB7 in fantasy points, and right in front of him was Jaden Daniels. Just as surprising, in my opinion. I've told you I was shocked how well he played this year. And then behind him, one was Bo Nix. in the top 10.
Right.
So impressive.
Yeah, nobody saw that. You're right about that. Nobody saw Bo Nix coming. He looks good too. I'll tell you. That kid can throw the ball. He reminds me of Justin Herbert, actually. A little bit more mobile.
Yep.
But he can sling it, that kid. So
I got him in the playoffs.
Yeah. Denver's set for years to come at the quarterback position. All right, how about running back wise, Bill? Why don't you throw a name? Give me a name or two of guys that surprised you.
Obviously, we've talked. Henry and Barkley surprised me. They did, going to new teams 1 and 2. But the running back that surprised me the most was on your brother's team, Josh Jacobs, who was RB like 27 last year for the Raiders.
Yeah.
Moves to the Packers, has a rebirth, and finishes like RB 5 or 6 in fantasy points. The guy was terrific, and shocking that he did so well. He was like RB3 a couple of years ago. He had a really nice season, but last year he wasn't injured or anything. He just didn't play well, and they turned it around with the Packers. He was pretty much unstoppable, ran hard.
But, Bill, I can always find the part of the glass that's bone dry.
Put a hole in this.
Right?
Stick a fork right in this. Come on.
It was after the second Jordan Love injury. He pulled a groin muscle, and he missed a game and a half or 2 games or whatever, right? It was during that time he was out that I think Matt LaFleur decided we're going to run the ball. And he changed the offense around, and he centered it around Josh Jacobs. And Jacobs took off, and Jordan Love wasn't worth a shizzle from that point in the season on.
Right. And we never heard from their wide rreceivers either.
Oh, my God.
Never heard from them again.
Please don't bring that up now. Okay. Don't say his name.
Okay? I'm not.
Can you read my mind, Pat? People on Green Bay. Yeah. He's the Voldemort of the NFL. I don't want to hear his name. All right. But I'll tell you another name. James Cook, Buffalo. Man, a season he ended up having.
Yeah. Again, I have to toot my own horn. I said he would be a top 10 running back, and he is. He's number 10 in fantasy points scored. The touchdowns that he's gotten, and talk about touches, the guy only gets like 13 or 14 touches a game, but his yards per carry, his explosiveness, and his just nose for the goal line has been terrific. So, I love having him.
I don't think anybody thought Buffalo was going to be that good. I really don't have. Josh, this kid here, if I'm right, didn't he have 17 touchdowns? I think he had 15 rushing and 2 receiving, something like that. And Josh Allen had 41. So, I mean, that team just scores a ton of touchdowns.
They've scored the most in their franchise history. This year has been the most touched. Yeah, that includes all the Jim Kelly years and the K-Gun and all those high-scoring teams. They've outscored this year. It's crazy.
Now, receiver-wise, there's 2 names I have in mind. The first I'll throw out to you, Bill, is Terry McLaurin. And he came on strong at the end of the season. I think he won a lot of playoff games for some guys.
Except last week. He's got he still needs 1 more touchdown to break the record for most receiving touchdowns in a season for the Commanders/Redskins. He had 1 catch last week, disappointing, but I do think they're going to try. I don't know how much time he'll get, but he's practicing full all week. I think he gets on the field this week, and they're going to do everything they can to get him that record. And he has been, again, scary Terry. He was not so scary last year, but he really turned it around this year, to your point.
He sure did. All right, give me another receiver that caught your eye this year that came beat out his ADP.
Well, 2 of them, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. Think about their quarterbacks who threw to them, and these guys are number 5 and number 6 in fantasy points in the NFL. Again, rookies always scare me just because, I don't know, I'm an old man and I just don't believe that rookies can come in and do as well as they do. But Malik Neighbors, he only had 1 game where he didn't have double-digit points in a fantasy game. And that's with not
a murderer's row of quarterbacks.
Are you kidding me? Tommy DeVito, I mean, throwing to him, he still had an unbelievable season. And then Mitchell, again, with the whole Trevor Lawrence situation, which I want to touch on in a minute, but that was a nightmare. But that guy had a great fantasy
Brian Thomas, he had a hell of a season. He had a hell of a season. One other name I'll throw out, it's just Jordan Addison. I don't think anybody saw that coming too, as far as his performance. But I think he did take advantage of a ton of double coverage on Justin Jefferson. But hey, he caught the ball. So
it took him a while to get going too. I mean, he really didn't ramp up. I think he was hurt, but I don't think he started doing anything till about week 7. So actually, a lot of guys cut him early in the season. So some people were pretty fortunate.
He did enough to ruin my season. All right, Bill. Thanks.
Not everything everything revolves around your.
Well, you know what?
team,
Most of it on this show,
NFL out there.
on this show, most of it does. I'm
All
sorry.
right, well,
Bill.
it is your show, so I'll acquiesce.
All right, fantasy down now. Let's point the thumb down. I'm obviously much more comfortable doing this.
All right.
I mentioned Justin Jefferson. I mentioned Jordan Love. No need to drill that anymore. Let me throw a couple other names at you, and then you throw me a couple. Najee Harris, 5 touchdowns. I think it's time to stop talking Najee Harris as a, let's say, top 30 or draft pick.
I agree. The thing is, he was the only game in town. Warren was a compliment, but he's never overtaken him. If you watch Najee run, he's so determined, and he just runs right into the back of the line every time. He doesn't hit the hole, just runs into the back of the line. So yeah, I'm happy to get rid of him as far as a bust. And then as far as running backs, we can just touch on Breece Hall.
Yeah, he's the other name I had. Yeah,
in some leagues, he was the first running back taken. If you were scared of Christian McCaffrey, he finished as RB17 on the year. But it's also a microcosm of the entire New York Jets season.
That is unbelievable. The offense, the talent they had between him and Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, and they stunk all season long. 5 rush TD for
You're
Breece.
being kind with saying stunk. That's for sure.
2 other names, Bill. Give me a comments on Kirk Cousins, 18 passing touchdowns. I think he had, and he started out relatively hot. Boy, he had an atrocious second half of the season. And the other name, Bill, comment on for me, Cooper Kupp, 6 touchdowns for the Rams, but there is something wrong with that guy right now.
Well, so with Cousins, he started off fair. I won't say he started off well, and then he had a little bit of a drought. Then he had that 5 touchdown game, and everyone thought he was back. And then he went right back in the tank. And you can't say it was the Falcons or the system, because Penix came in, and boy, that kid played well. And he threw touchdowns. Pitt scored a touchdown. London's back already. Yeah. They started giving Bijan. So Cousins, maybe his days are over. And how do you like that? I'm sorry. Yeah, and then who's the other guy you just mentioned? I'm sorry. Cooper Kupp. Again, I think Stafford just looks at Nakua now. I don't think he's looking anywhere else. The tight end didn't have any catches this year. Nakua's getting 12 targets. Kupp gets 2 or 3. And it's not like Kupp isn't open. I'm telling you, I had Kupp on my team. I watched the Rams. He's open, half the time. I won't say every time, but he doesn't even get a look from Stafford. Doesn't get a look.
I don't know, Bill. I don't know. The Rams are. I know this. They're one and done. They are one and done this year. But they still had a heck of a season for a team that's really almost rebuilding after that Super Bowl. Okay.
Yeah.
It's time now. Bill Reinhard, give me your way too early. Way too early, but I'm going to hold you to every single pick next year. Way too early, top 5. Let's say standard scoring, non-PPR. Who are you looking to come off the board first next year?
Jamar Chase. You and I both love this guy. He is, he's got a cloaking device on because no one can see him in the secondary when he gets out there. So Chase,
he does. He's got that Harry Potter invisibility cloak that Justin Jefferson lost.
Where did he go? Oh, he's behind me in the end zone. It's crazy how good he is. I have him on. I have Barkley at 2 because he's only 28, and if they're going to keep doing what they're doing with the Eagles, with that offense, with Hurts and the receivers, I just love Barkley, staying on. Bijan Robinson, number 3, who had a total resurgence, without Arthur
like the real deal now, Bill. He looks as advertised now.
He does. And did you see they stopped giving the ball to Tyler Algier the last month?
They finally, after a year and 3 quarters, stopped that nonsense. This kid knows how to score touchdowns.
Stop messing around.
Right.
Justin Jefferson.
No,
I have him.
No,
I know you don't.
No.
Well, then I hope we're in the same draft because I'm going to take him.
You can have him. You can have him. Okay.
I'll take him. The kid's only 25 years old, so I still love him.
You would take Justin Jefferson over Jahmyr Gibbs?
Well, that's the thing. So I have Puka Nacua and Jahmyr Gibbs are my 5, 1, and 1A.
Okay.
Nacua because he's just so open and Stafford keeps throwing to him as well as Stafford's there. And Gibbs, he's gotten the volume because Montgomery hasn't played. Now, when they split the backfield, I mean, there were games when you pull your hair out waiting for Gibbs to even get on the field.
I know. That's fair. That's fair to say, but I think
him.
Montgomery's going to start. I think he's wearing down.
I don't know where he is next year. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
that's fair. That's fair to say. All right, Bill, real quick here before I let you go. Week 18,
Sure.
for any idiot that's still doing this in Week 18, do you have any one-off guys you would want to throw in the lineup this weekend?
Well, McLaurin, like we talked about.
Right.
Gibbs, definitely against Minnesota. Last time out, 2 touchdowns, 100 yards. Bijan Robinson against Carolina, he could have 200 yards rushing.
Yeah.
I'm very high on Justin Herbert, but pay attention out there in fantasy land. If the Steelers lose to the Bengals, then you start Justin Jefferson.
Right. Okay.
If the Steelers win, then you start Justin Herbert. If the Steelers win, do not start Herbert because they can't move anywhere up or down.
Anywhere higher, right?
So stay there, and then just make sure you're not starting Mahomes or Josh Allen or Nico Collins or Barkley because I don't know what if Sal
I'll be shocked. Josh Allen won't even play, and he'll end up with 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. I don't know how we'll do it, but he'll
start. He's trying to hold on to his consecutive starting streak, so he will get the start. He'll have 3 snaps. Barkley, I don't think they let him get his 100 yards. I do like McLaurin. You can try and give him a shot to get a touchdown. And that's my list for a very strange Week 18.
I hope, Bill, it holds serve. I hope the AFC holds serve because in round 2, divisional round, it would be Ravens at Bills.
Yeah.
And boy, that would be an awesome game because one of those guys has to put up or shut up. Now, Allen has made it to the AFC Championship game, so it's not really fair to say that about him. But I'm really looking to see if Lamar can pull this off or not. And that is one tough place to do it in Buffalo.
I know. It's just they're built to beat Buffalo with the running game. They're so small. Bills are so small up the middle. So I do worry about that. But if they can outscore Baltimore, and I think they can, then the Bills have a shot. We'll see what happens. And that's when Joe Klecko always texts me when the Bills are playing a high level game and my blood pressure's high. He texts me and teases me. So
all right, but listen, Bill Reinhard, this is going to do it for me and you. Right. And I just want to tell you, I enjoyed having you on the whole season. You were outstanding throughout the season, and it was great, very enjoyable having you with me. And as a long-suffering Buffalo Bills fan, of course, I'm a long-suffering Rams fan. You and I have a lot in common here.
Yeah.
But we'll see if the Bills can navigate. That's a tough thicket to navigate in the AFC. We'll see if they can pull it off. But
it is.
I look forward to having you back here next year.
Thank you.
And I look forward to not doing fantasy football next year. I'm still going to do a segment. I am so exhausted with this fantasy football. Our league's been 44 years now.
Wow.
And I tell you, I had a full head of hair when I decided, I'll do fantasy football. But
well, this was all my pleasure, Pat. I really did appreciate it. I wore my best hat for you tonight.
I love it. Love that
Standing
hat.
Red Buffalo.
Love it.
When you have Pat Leonard on, I'm trying to catch him in the standings for our picks in the Daily News weekly picks. I think I'm 3 or 4 behind him. So I got one last chance to catch him. So tell him I'm trying my best to get him, and go Bills.
All right. Thanks again, Bill. Look forward to talking to you soon. All right. All right. Bill Reinhard joining me there. I can't hold this guy up. After the break, the great Sean Green is going to join me from the Sports Gambling Podcast. I want to talk to Sean about should anybody be betting anything substantial in Week 18? And also, let's get some Super Bowl odds off of him, both the NFC and AFC. We'll do that all next on This Week in Pro Football.
Welcome to Park Bank, a return to better banking. With 7 locations across Philadelphia and South Jersey, we prioritize your financial well-being with a blend of modern amenities and traditional customer service. Our professional team is dedicated to providing tailored banking solutions, whether you are opening your first account, planning for retirement, or expanding your business. Our services include a wide range of personal and business banking options with competitive deposit rates and products. We are committed to making your banking experience seamless and efficient with the latest technology at your fingertips and the personalized support you deserve. Park Bank, your community. For more information, go to parkbank.com. That's Park, P-A-R-K-E, bank.com. Member FDIC. Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated is the concrete cutting specialist in the Philadelphia area since 1995, and they've become the specialist in the Pittsburgh area as well. These guys are celebrating 28 years as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. So if you have a project that requires any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition, or interior excavating, call the specialist, Concrete Cutting Systems, located at 2514 Orthodox Street in the heart of Philly. Call them at 215-533-0652. With a fleet of over 70 service trucks, Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated is always ready to service all of your concrete cutting, drilling, and concrete demolition and highway sealing needs. These guys are the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. So don't delay. Call the boys today at 215-533-0652. And be sure to check them out on Facebook and Instagram at CCSINC_Phila or on the web at concretecuttingsystems.net.
Welcome back here to This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you on JAKIB Sports. Don't forget to end. I'm looking at a lot of these stream comments, and I enjoy everybody making the comments about it. Thank you very much for taking an interest in the show. And how about an interest in this guy? This guy, a veteran handicapper and the host of the Sports Gambling Podcast, and that's the great Sean Green joining me. Sean, how you doing?
Doing great, Pat. Thanks for having me on. Happy New Year. Hopefully you had a good Christmas.
Nah, it was all fine. Thank you very much, pal. I'm sure yours was the usual debauchery and all kinds of hedonistic nonsense going on in the Green household.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it was, it was kind of all over the place for the holidays. But, yeah, hanging out with my in-laws. And it's always funny because we had NFL games on. And, you know, I had money on the Chiefs the first game, looking really smart. And then I had Texans for the late game, and they're like, "Why would you bet on the Texans?"
Oh man!
And then people always asking the questions about gambling. So wait, you need the Texans to lose by less than 5 points, but they're down by 25 points. That means you lose, right?
God!
Yeah, that means I lost.
Oh God! Bad enough with the in-laws, but when they're asking questions like that now. That's avoid the cutlery then when they start asking those kind of
questions. And some of it's like I don't even think they're trying to be jerks. They just can't help but rub salt in the wounds when they're asking questions about losing bets. But yeah, good holiday season, a lot of fun games here to close it out, and some interesting opportunities week 18.
All right. Okay. I want you to weigh in now on the Saquon debate. I know it's basically over. He is not going to play probably at all. If you look at the Eagles injury report, it's fascinating. They got 14 guys limited from rest. I think the Eagles are really, they're going to try limit. Somebody's got to play, but I don't think it's going to be Barkley. But let me just posit this with you and give me your thoughts. Are we now like so hyper-focused on the hardware, meaning the Lombardi trophy, that attaining a record that's been sitting there really for over 40 years, it was 1984, that Eric Dickerson set this record. I mean, everything now is eclipsed by you've got to win the Lombardi. And you could really say it in any other sport too. But do you think maybe we're missing something there, that there's something joyful about a guy trying to attain this record, and we're not going to let him do it?
I mean, I totally see that case. Hey, it's always fun to witness history as a sports fan. Would I have liked to see Saquon beat the rushing record for Eric Dickerson? Sure, but I would much rather see him win Super Bowl MVP or be in a spot to be completely healthy and play in this next game with the rest. I think they should have rested him. I think it's a good decision. I see the case. Like, it would have been sweet as an Eagles fan to watch him set the record against the Giants. I think none of these situations are exactly the same, right? Because, hey, if he needed 20 yards, is he playing? I think he is. But the fact that he needs 100 yards, I think is a different conversation, because one, that means you have to play the entire offensive line. The Eagles last had a bye week 5. And so to get rest for these guys like Lane Johnson, Cam Jurgens, Jordan Mailata, and Saquon himself has set like a record for the number of touches he's had in this game. I get it. It's fun to celebrate the records, but I'm fine with it being all focused about the championship. To me, that's what sports should be about is, hey, let's try and win the Super Bowl as a team. I mean, in the city of Philadelphia, are they throwing a parade for Saquon Barkley if he breaks the rushing record? No, they're not. But are they throwing a parade for Saquon and the Eagles if they win the Super Bowl? You're damn right they are. And
I think it's fine. You are right. You're right on the account. But at the same time, I'm just being my usual practical self here. What they're asking the Eagles to do is to run the table win 4 games. And there's no New York Giants or Carolina Panthers in those 4 opponents. I mean, they're going to be top tier, 3 NFC and 1 AFC opponent. That's not going to be easy to do. And I said to Sal Paolantonio earlier in the show, had the Eagles left Saquon in for the last 11 minutes of that Dallas game, I think most people would have been okay with that. And I'm telling you, Sean, he would have run 50 more yards. They were gouging Dallas last week. And if he was only 45 or 50 yards short of this record, I think they would give him a shot at it. But unfortunate way it turned out.
Well, and it's, and also Saquon set the Eagles franchise record. He had a chance to set his own individual record earlier in the season, and he opted to let the young guys play. He did run for 2,000 yards, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I think it's not a like, hey, do this every time type of conversation, right? Because your point, like if he was closer, I think maybe they would do it. But again, him playing means also you have to play the entire offensive line the whole game. And as much as the Giants have just been a soft team, I think they would just load the box up with 11 guys and just try and shut Saquon Barkley down. And I think that would take a lot out of Saquon.
Yeah, that's true.
He's had 60 carries in his last 2 games.
I know.
The guy needs.
You're right. You're right.
Why did Christian McCaffrey blow out his Achilles?
That's fair.
He had 400 touches. So
that's correct.
I'm all for playing, and certainly not tanking situations. But I think if you won 13 games, you earn the right to rest some guys. Especially Saquon himself, who's been nicked up earlier in the season. I'd much rather have them be fresh and ready for a potential Super Bowl run. And to your point, it's not going to be easy, but I think it might be a little bit easier if they're rested going into this game, either against Green Bay or Washington.
And we were talking, Sal and I earlier, really the larger issue is Jalen Hurts. And he's still in that protocol, Sean. And that's something that now that the Saquon debate is over, attention is going to get turned to why this guy is now almost 2 weeks in the concussion protocol. And that'll be a major, major point of emphasis now for the Eagles going forward. But Sean, let me ask you another of my dreaded hypotheticals that you have to put up with, and that is week 18, right?
Yeah.
Is there any noted drop in overall betting activity in week 18 because there's so much uncertainty? You don't know how long certain guys are going to play. Are seasoned or wise bettors, do they lay off this week?
I would say no, because I think, both the public and seasoned bettors, they like to strike when they think they have an angle, right? And so maybe seasoned bettors actually do have an angle, and maybe the public thinks they have an angle, and maybe they don't as much. So I think you're still going to see a decent amount of volume here in week 18. Now, to your point, maybe you do stay away, or at least, like a game, Minnesota-Detroit. Both teams are going guns out, and it's an easier handicap, at least from that standpoint. You don't have to look at the motivation. One trend we discussed on the show is teams that need to win the game versus teams that have quote unquote nothing to play for.
Right.
The teams that have nothing to play for historically have been like 60% ATS. So I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the teams, and especially in like division situations, like the Falcons and the Panthers.
Exactly right.
Falcons need to win to have a chance to get into the playoffs. They got Michael Penix. They're laying 9 points, and the Panthers, I'm sure, would love to spoil that. So I think I don't think there's any big sweeping generalizations. I would just say overall, maybe keep an eye out for the teams that quote unquote don't need it, because they love playing spoilers, and especially
the ones like you said, getting a big number.
Yeah, especially in division, especially a big number.
I think you're right about that. That's a perfect example, a game like that where if at the end of the first quarter it's like 3-3 or Carolina might be up 7-3, now you've got a whole different team. Instead of a team thinking, "Oh man, where's my golf clubs?" Now you got a team thinking, "Hey, we can win this game.
We can win this game."
Yeah. All right, listen, Sean, talking with Sean Green here from the Sports Gambling Podcast. Sean, I wanted to get some odds off of you right now based upon where everything is. And I picked 3 teams in each conference because I think these are the only 3 in each conference, to me, have a real chance to lift that trophy come February. In the NFC, Detroit, Minnesota, Philadelphia. Who, odds-wise, is the favorite at this point?
Yeah, Detroit is the favorite there at plus 425 to win the Super Bowl. Eagles in second there of those 3 at 650, and then Vikings at plus 850. Although this will be interesting because obviously if the Vikings win and they have the number 1 seed, that's gonna adjust the odds. And Dan Campbell is a guy who's been wanting to play all his guys, even in like a meaningless situation last week against the 49ers. And if they lose this game against the Vikings, and then they don't have home field advantage, they don't have that bye week.
Right.
That's going to be a lot of games in a row that this Lions team have played. So certainly I would expect the odds to shift a little bit based on the outcome of Detroit, Minnesota.
All right. Philadelphia plus 650. That's an attractive number. I got to tell you, that's an attractive number. I think Philly is the most complete team in the NFC. And I think that's something to think about if Hurts is okay. In the AFC, Sean, I see Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore as the only 3 teams with, I think, a serious chance to make it. What do the odds makers think of those 3 teams?
Yeah, so Chiefs are the odds-on favorite for the AFC and in general at plus 340. Bills next there at plus 650. They're tied with the Ravens at plus 650. So, Chiefs a considerable favorite. They do have the 1 seed. Makes sense. Obviously, the history with Mahomes and everything.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
And I mean, certainly historic if they do win it all. Winning 3 in a row, it's going to take a lot for this Chiefs team.
God. It's just so daunting to go into Kansas City with
11
Chiefs on the field and 8 or 7 or 8 officials who just they just can't help themselves.
And I bet on the Chiefs in the Christmas Day game. I mean, my thing is I was pulling my hair out watching the Chiefs get these calls and everything kind of break the right way. And I said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to start betting with them because at least when you get those calls, they come your way and you're like, hey, it's the Chiefs. It's what happens. So
there's no question.
Certainly very good, not to take away anything from their play, but they also seem to have everything bounce the right way. And when in doubt, the officials give them a bunch of calls.
And we're going to see it again. All right, Sean Green, I only have a couple minutes left here. There's only 2 games I'm going to ask you about this weekend. Let's start with Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. Now, this guy, Joe Burrow, I mean, someone's going to have to hit him with a fire hose to cool him off. Pittsburgh still has a lot to play for. Pittsburgh, you'd much rather be, that 5 seed than, I guess, a 6, because you don't want to go anywhere near Buffalo, right? You don't even want to risk that, and you'd much rather play in Houston, right? Than even go to Baltimore. So, who do you like here, Cincinnati at Pittsburgh?
Yeah, and Pittsburgh has an outside chance to win the division. They would need
a Ravens loss to Cleveland.
Yeah. Ravens losing to Cleveland. Ravens are favored by 20 now, which is insane. It was 17 and it's up to 20, which is crazy.
Oh my God.
I you'd have to go back to like the 2007 Pats to get like a spread above 20 points. Now I do like taking the Steelers here and the points. They're a small underdog here, 1.5, 2 points, depending on where you're looking. The angle I like is Mike Tomlin, after he's lost, after a 20-point loss or more, he's 14-2 ATS. I think this Steelers team, it's a good time to buy low on them because, they played 3 games in 11 days against the Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs, and they played the Eagles and the Ravens on the road. So everyone's like, oh, these Steelers team is trash. But you look at, that's the hardest, and all in 11 days. They played the Ravens on short rest. They played the Chiefs on that short week as well. I think this team, with the extra rest, And Cincinnati missing their right tackle. I think their defense is going to be able to slow down the Bengals enough, and the Bengals defense is just horrible. So I think Steelers win the game outright. So I would take the Steelers here.
Yeah. Okay. And of course, the other game I'm going to bother you about is the biggest game of the week, the Sunday nighter now, is Detroit hosting Minnesota. I'm surprised here, Sean. It's just a 3-point number. I would have thought there'd at least be a hook there, or maybe even a little more. Look at what you just said. Detroit plus 425, Minnesota plus 850. Obviously, the serious money thinks Detroit is appreciably better than Minnesota. What are your thoughts on this game here?
Yeah, I will take Minnesota and the 3 points. To me, now again, this is a tough game because going against Detroit feels kind of crazy, but it should be kind of crazy to go against this Minnesota team. Minnesota at least has a defense, and to me, that's the deciding factor. And you're getting 3 points, and it's in division revenge, which I always think it's tough to beat another good team in your division twice. And it's going to be crazy that we see a wild card team with 14 wins. And I think I crunched the numbers. This is the only time 2 14-win teams have played each other in the regular season that at least I could find. So kind of a historic game in a lot of senses. I just think this Detroit defense, I can't trust them to get a stop. They're giving me the Vikings in 3 points. And the Lions just played on Monday against a game where they were down at halftime, had to rally. The very emotional game against San Francisco. It's just like, I think at some point Detroit might hit a little wall here, and maybe it's in this game, maybe it's in the playoffs, but they keep getting up for these big games. Like they were so psyched to get revenge against the 49ers. I think the Vikings are going to be ready for them. I like the Flores defense. I like the fact I'm getting 3 points, but it should be a great game.
All right. Excellent. I appreciate that analysis very much there. Pittsburgh and Minnesota. Just one comment you made about that. You're right. A 14-3 team going on the road. But I'm telling you, Sean, I said it to Sal Paolantonio earlier. The Rams, and you're out in Los Angeles, they're going to sit everybody. They are absolutely crazy because they're going to sit everybody. They're going to lose to Seattle, and they're going to end up with Minnesota or Detroit, God forbid, Detroit coming to play the wild card game. They're going to get run out of the building. And I just think it's so stupid. Get that 3 seed. You avoid that altogether. But it doesn't look like that's what they're going to do. So
well, and the Rams one, to me, overall it was an easier thing for the Saquon rest. But the Rams one, to your point, it is a more interesting question because they have a super old team in the Rams, and guys like Puka and Kupp probably need, and Stafford, who's taking a ton of shots, could use the week off. But to your point, do you want to play Detroit or Minnesota? Now they beat Minnesota earlier in LA. It's going to be a tough playoff.
They're not going to do it twice. It's just crazy. All right, listen, Sean Green, where does everybody find you this weekend? And of course, I want you back throughout the playoffs. Where does everybody track you down?
Yeah, just type in Sports Gambling Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get the podcast. Can't miss us. Appreciate it, Pat. And
thanks very much, Pat. Appreciate you joining me and look forward to talking to you for the playoffs. We'll do that certainly. And thanks again. All right.
Let it ride.
All right. I'm sorry. I've held this gentleman up too. I can't do that. Pat Leonard, the New York Daily News. He's going to join me in just a couple minutes. And we will wrap up the show by talking about Giants and Eagles and tanking and how Pat Leonard sees the NFC shaping up in terms of the playoffs. We'll do all that to wrap it up here on This Week in Pro Football.
Somewhere on the blue planet lies a hidden gem, nestled in the heart of lush greenery. Where the game of golf takes on a new meaning. At Spring Mill Country Club, we offer an unparalleled golfing experience. Our meticulously maintained course is designed to challenge and delight golfers of all levels. But that's not all. Spring Mill is also the perfect venue for your most cherished celebrations. From intimate gatherings to grand weddings, our elegant banquet facilities provide the perfect backdrop for your special day. With exquisite cuisine, personalized service, and breathtaking surroundings, every event at Spring Mill becomes a cherished memory. Let us be a part of your journey, whether it's a round of golf, a celebration, or a once-in-a-lifetime wedding. Spring Mill Country Club, where every moment is extraordinary. Visit us today and create your unforgettable story.
Welcome back. We've got another exciting play underway at KennedyAuto.com.
That's right. At KennedyAuto.com, you can browse their entire inventory from home.
The customer is scrolling hundreds of Ford, Mazda, and Subaru vehicles right at his fingertips.
He made his selection and got a bottom line price sent directly to his email. He could go all the way.
And the deal is good, all without leaving his couch. Incredible. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
Johnny Apple's Restaurant and Bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's Restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Hi, welcome back here this week in pro football. Just looking at some of the StreamYard comments here. Tanner McKee, doesn't he remind you of Jared Goff? I think he even has the same number, 16. He reminds me of Goff, not very mobile, but he can sling it, and he does look like he's got a bunch of smarts. It'll be interesting to see what the Eagles do there and whether or not maybe Kenny Pickett might be one and done. They can move McKee into that backup role. He looks like, though, a project that could pay some dividends in a league that is way short of bona fide quarterbacks. And here's a guy who can attest to that because he's been watching this now for years in New York, the dearth of high level quarterback talent. And that's the great Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and the Talking Ball podcast. Pat, how you doing?
Pat, I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm sorry I held you up, pal. I know that you're pulled in a million directions. And
No.
But
thank you. No worries. No worries. I love coming on your show. These Eagles, Giants, NFC East matchups, even in a year now where the Eagles are flying high and the Giants are so low, all of these weeks are so chock full of storylines. There's so much.
Oh, they certainly are. But let me start with this one. Where in the hell did that come from? How shocked were you sitting in the press box last week to watch that big blue juggernaut go off against the Indianapolis Colts?
I mean, I would say it didn't surprise me that Neighbors had the talent to do what he did. It was more, I was kind of shocked at the Colts defense lack of effort. I mean, their arm tackles, if they missed a tackle, guys weren't chasing the ball back, with their teammates. It was an alarming, Pat, you ever been at the stadium and as you're watching a couple quarters in, one of the teams on the field, you just say, they don't really look like they want to be here. Yeah. Like that's what Indianapolis looked like. Now, to the credit of the Giants players and the coaching staff, trying to win, still trying to put some good products on the field. Not normal, as you alluded to, as you introduced me, for me to see just tons of points coming from the Giants, no matter what, especially because they have so few players. So, yeah, that came out of nowhere, especially because everybody knows that what they really want and what they're really selling their fans is a high draft pick that they've cost themselves.
That's right. But I guess it does make you pause. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of Giant fans sat there and thought, what might have been? Where the hell has this been? That all of a sudden it can manifest in week 17. You say, why the hell weren't we doing this, in weeks 8, week 11, week 12, week 13? I don't know. It just drives you crazy. But now you've given me a good segue. Now I want to discuss this with you too. Because a certain senior colleague of ours who wrote extensively for the New York Daily News for a long time continues to talk about how the Giants cost themselves by winning that game. And I don't like that. I always bristle when I hear those kind of comments because Pat, you're there, and I think you can probably attest that there's 53 guys in the Giants locker room and 20 on the coaching staff who only do one thing each week, and that's think, how the hell can we win this game? So isn't the whole concept of the tank, is it just a media fan thing? Or does it ever gain any foothold within an organization?
No, I think it can gain a foothold. I think the demarcation that you're talking about is, you're right, that the players who it's their livelihoods, right? It's the paycheck they're bringing home to their family. The coaches, the same thing. They don't want to get fired. They don't want to lose games. The coaches and the players are never trying to lose games. When people talk about tanking, and what really does happen in certain instances is you're talking about a front office strategy and an ownership, let's say, acquiescence to the idea that maybe we're going to be a little bit worse off in the short term, but it will be better for us in the long term. Like, for example, you remember the allegation that Stephen Ross, the Miami Dolphins owner, offered Brian Flores money for every loss that the Dolphins had when he was the head coach there in that lawsuit. So you know that it happens, those conversations occur. I think, Pat, you're right that the Giants players and coaches have not been going on the field every week trying to lose, trying to get a higher draft pick. But when you see Daniel Jones, the plug pulled on Daniel Jones and him not only shut down, but then released, when you see a lot of the leaders of this team, Dexter Lawrence, Bobby Okereke, it's like every time one of these guys gets an injury, they disappear from the locker room. They disappear from the face of the earth. It's like they have just robbed the locker room of talent, of leadership. To me, that's like where, I guess the best way I would put it is, you can't overtly say we're trying to lose, but as a general manager looking at possibly getting a number 1 pick, you could cross your fingers behind your back as you're
I got it. Yeah. And here's a pragmatic example, maybe, Pat, when they decided to sit Daniel Jones, they bypassed Drew Lock and went with Tommy DeVito. Now, I think Lock is a superior NFL quarterback to Tommy DeVito. So maybe somebody there could have put their tinfoil hat on and said, wait a minute, the Giants are making a decision here, which clearly, might compromise their ability to win games. But why would a Brian Daboll go along with that? Because he might not survive this season, right? He's got no motivation to do that.
Right. And you know what, Pat, I think part of the tanking talk comes from, like, let's say a group of Giants fans sitting around, it's like, well, the alternative, if we're not tanking and losing intentionally, the alternative is that we've actually been trying to win all these games and we've lost 11 in a row prior to beating the Colts or whatever it is. So it was kind of like, well, we hope that they're trying to be this bad because otherwise everybody should be fired. But to your point, they had been trying to win the games. They're just that bad. Their personnel decisions were that bad. The coaching has been that bad. And to your point, Brian Daboll skipped over Drew Lock to Tommy DeVito because he adjudged, and the Giants and Joe Schoen, they adjudged Tommy would give him a better chance to win. Obviously, they immediately recognized that was wrong. And so that's another example of them putting on the table of, we don't know how to evaluate a quarterback.
Yeah, that's fair. That's entirely fair. But I want to say this just to wrap up the subject. And I know this show is based in Philadelphia and won't be popular, but I was very happy for the Giants winning that game last week. I think that's a terrible, terrible strain to be under, 11 straight losses. And they just exploded last week, and God bless them. I think it's nice that they were able to win that game. All right, Pat Leonard here. Talk with Pat Leonard, the host of the Talk of Ball podcast, the New York Daily News. Pat, are the Giants feeling a little robbed that they're not going to get the chance to deny Saquon that rushing record?
I think there's a lot of Giants. A lot of the players that would be playing him are younger guys who really don't have much of a relationship with him. I would say, like, Dexter Lawrence isn't there. He's hurt. Bobby Okereke's out. I think if anything, there's a sigh of relief from the front office that Saquon is not going to go for 280 yards in this game.
Right.
I think that's what it is. But I don't know if you saw this, but today Barkley put out a commercial for a sleep aid medication, and the script of the commercial, he says to the camera, "Hey, I heard you've had some trouble sleeping. Well, take some Unisom. I don't need help sleeping for my big game, but maybe you do." An amazing troll of John Mara and Joe Schoen and the Giants that clearly seemed to be timed for like a few days before Saquon being on the field.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, no, the Giants were not looking forward to facing him. In fact, I would say guys like Darius Slayton, who are still here, were friends and teammates of Saquon Barkley. They're the guys who quietly would tell you off to the side, like, what a huge mistake it was that we let him go, not just for the football side of it, but also for the leadership side of it. So I think maybe it helps Joe Schoen and the Giants out a little bit that he's not there, but maybe I think the damage has already been done.
Maybe, Pat, the most infamous bit of film from the entire season of the entire NFL season this year was the cut of the Giants Brain Trust on Hard Knocks talking about Daniel Jones versus Saquon. Boy, once it gets on that celluloid, boy, it never leaves. Will the Giants coaching staff and front office make the cut into 25?
I think, okay, the most likely, like if you were betting in Vegas on this, I think the most likely scenario odds-wise is that Joe Shane, the general manager, stays and Brian Daboll, the head coach, is fired. But in my gut, without information to report right now, it's going to happen. I think they're going to fire them both. The reason is, Pat, first of all, the optics you just described from HBO's Hard Knocks. It's not like they can contend a reporter's report of the truth. It's just there.
Right.
Also, I think you tell me if you think this is fair or not. I think if John Mara and Steve Tisch retain this regime, I think they're announcing in some ways they're okay with what we've just seen this season. Yeah. And I think you're lowering the standard for your organization if you do that. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I really do. The die may have been cast with those 11 straight losses. But I always feel bad, Pat, for teams that, how many years has Daboll been there? It's just, what's this, the second year?
This is 3.
Yeah, teams that have to keep churning and over again with coaches and then new coordinators. And here you got to learn a whole new system and all new jargon. It's just, you know what I mean? It just becomes a definition of insanity. And so I feel bad, but I think you're right. Your look at the Giants organization. It'll be very interesting to see if the Giants, who are not known as an aggressive draft day team, might have to be so in order to land a quarterback. Because I hope no one in that organization thinks their 2025 starter is on that roster right now.
No, they know that he's not. The players know he's not. They will draft one. I mean, they will draft one. They have to draft one. Right.
All right, Pat Leonard, I want your take here. We're into week 18, but a lot of the playoff seeding's not decided yet. But just give me start with the NFC because you've been watching that all season long. Who do you think is the team most likely to survive this gauntlet that's of the NFC playoffs?
I think it's either the Eagles or whoever the 1 seed becomes.
Right.
I think that this Lions-Minnesota game is so massive.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Eagles. I heard you saying before I came on too. I agree with it. Obviously Hurts' health means everything, right?
Right.
They are, if you're an Eagles fan listening to this, you're knocking on wood. The Eagles are as healthy as you would want to be at this point outside of that Hurts injury right now.
Right.
So if they stay this healthy, like the Lions, to me, they would be the obvious pick if they were anything close to healthy on defense, but their defense scares the living daylights out of me.
I know. And he's young, and he plays everybody the whole damn game, and a useless Monday nighter against San Francisco. I don't know about Dan Campbell sometimes. I think sometimes Dan Campbell is the biggest problem for Dan Campbell. I do. I think, it could show up, Sean. I'm sorry, Pat, at any time.
Yeah,
in the playoffs.
Yeah. No. So I guess I would go with the Eagles, although I think, if they have a key injury along the way there, then I would like that whoever the 1 seed becomes. But then on the AFC, Pat, here's the thing no one wants to hear. The Chiefs look like they're playing as well as anybody, and they're getting better every week. And I know they're going to be resting, basically for 3 weeks. So you got to hope they get rusty, but all season they've been looking like this ugly team grinding out games. And the last few weeks, as they added some pieces, they got DeAndre Hopkins there. I mean, to me, the 3-peat's on the table here.
Yeah, the Chiefs are going to be a tough out. You're right. They're a tough out. Everything's got to go through Arrowhead. You're asking Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen to go into that town. And we were laughing earlier in the show about how tough it is because the officials don't make it easy on visiting teams in Arrowhead Stadium. They don't. And it's a very, very tough assignment to do that. So you're right. We could have a repeat of the Super Bowl from just a couple of years ago, Kansas City and Philadelphia. Right.
That's right. Yeah, we could. That would mean Nick Sirianni with 2 Super Bowl appearances in 4 years?
I know, Pat.
A guy who
half the time
justifiably was on the hot seat early.
I know.
Early this
Half
season,
the time, the city wants to run him out of town.
It's an amazing. Up
It
and
is.
down.
It really is. This is a tough place to play, but the Eagles. That's why they sat Saquon, or why they're sitting him. They want to take their shot this year. It'll be interesting. It's going to be an interesting playoffs, and I look forward to all your reporting in the New York Daily News about it. And where else? Tell me where everybody can find the Talking Ball podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. We're on the Believe Network, and so you can listen on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcast. Subscribe there. And then also on my YouTube channel, the handle is PL on NFL. It's the Talking Ball with Pat Leonard YouTube page, and you can watch every full episode that we do on video as well as listening on audio. So we're there. We have new episodes every week.
And Pat's a great follow on X at Pat Leonard, right? Do I have that right?
At P Leonard NYDN for New York Daily News.
I didn't have it right. So thank you for the correction
good.
there. That's fine. But he's a great follow. Make sure you do that. And Pat, I appreciate you taking the time. Look forward to your stuff all throughout the playoffs and the podcast. And thanks again.
Always a pleasure, Pat. Thank you.
All right. Pat Leonard joining me there. Thank you very much. All right. Xander, can you bring up that week 18 schedule real quick? We'll finish with that. Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. 2 games on Saturday, AFC North. How about the Ravens, a 20.5-point favorite against the Browns on Saturday? Jump on those Browns. Jump on the Browns. And then the big game Saturday night, the Bengals, who only have an 8% chance of making the playoffs. The Bengals need to win that game, and they need Miami to lose against the Jets on Sunday. Not bloody likely, I would think. So the Bengals still hanging by a thread there. And then on Sunday, you have obviously all the divisional games. The biggest one, of course, the Sunday nighter, Minnesota at Detroit. A lot of other teams have to take care of business there. Denver locks up the 7 seed. They're going to beat Kansas City. Kansas City's sitting everybody against Denver. So I think Kansas City's going to get 2 weeks off, quite frankly. And it's unfortunate for the Bengals and the Dolphins, but they didn't take care of business during the first 17 weeks of the season. You can't blame the Broncos now. All right. So we'll see what the Eagles end up doing Sunday. I think they're going to sit a bunch of people. I wouldn't look for a very exciting game there. I think the Giants might win that one too and drop to like number 10 in the draft seeding. But hey, their job's to win the game. You can't blame them for that. So we'll be back next week. Thanks very much, Xander, for that schedule. And thanks very much for producing. Thanks to all of you for your comments on the stream. Thanks very much for that. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all my guests for joining me. We'll be back at it next week. The playoffs start. It gets very serious, and we'll be covering every single game. Look forward to talking to you then. Join me next week for This Week in Pro Football.